You ever notice how sometimes the people we think are inseparable on screen don't quite match up behind the scenes? Here's a perfect example. When Sherman Hemsley, George Jefferson himself, passed away, fans were stunned that Marla Gibbs, the sharp tongued Florence, was nowhere to be seen at his funeral. The world started buzzing. Was there a feud? Did they secretly fall out? Or was something bigger at play? Well, the truth is finally out, and it's not at all what people imagined. Let's rewind for a second. The Jeffersons wasn't just some silly sitcom from the 70s. This was a groundbreaking show. It took Norman Lear's world of All in the Family and flipped it, putting a black family front and center as they moved on up into luxury. America tuned in to laugh at George's swagger, Wheezy's patience, and Florence's razor sharp comebacks. And Sherman Hemsley, he was born for that role. Norman Lear even waited years until Sherman was available because he knew no one else could bring George Jefferson to life. What made the show special, though, was how layered it was. Sure, George strutted around with that famous walk, but his backstory, coming from Alabama sharecroppers, working as a janitor before starting his own business, gave real weight to his obsession with success. It wasn't just comedy, it was commentary. And Florence, played by Marla Gibbs, was originally supposed to be a small part, but audiences loved her sarcasm so much she became a regular. Fun fact, Gibbs actually kept her day job at United Airlines for 2 years after landing the role. She'd film scenes in the studio, then head back to her desk answering phones, sometimes with callers recognizing her voice from TV. But life behind the cameras wasn't always laughs. Many viewers, especially in the black community, felt George's pimp walk and buffoonish behavior played too close to stereotypes. Sherman himself pushed back against how far the scripts went, especially with racial slurs. When the producers ignored him, he quietly resisted, flubbing lines until they got the message. Eventually, the writers stopped using that language. It was his way of protecting the dignity of both his character and the audience. Off camera, though, Sherman couldn't have been more different from George. He was soft spoken, private, even shy. While George loved being the loudest voice in the room, Sherman would rather play jazz on his keyboard at home. Fame kind of snuck up on him. Friends remembered him being surprised when strangers swarmed him for photos in the street. But with fame came rumors, wild claims about drugs and hidden secrets. Sherman brushed it off, pointing out that he lived on carrot juice, fasting, and exercise. Truth is, he was known for being health conscious long before that was a trend. Still, life after the Jeffersons wasn't always easy. He starred in Amen, did voice work on dinosaurs, popped up on Fresh Prince and Martin. But by the 2000s, he struggled financially. He even had to sell off his rerun royalties just to stay afloat. Then came the biggest blow, an aggressive form of lung cancer, and in typical Sherman fashion, he made his own decision. No chemo, no poison, as he called it. He said he felt fine and he was at peace. Within weeks, he was gone at just 74 years old. And here's where things went off the rails. Instead of a proper farewell, Sherman's death turned into a messy court battle. His manager, a half brother who hadn't been in his life, and even a distant cousin all fought over his will and his body. For 3.5 months, his remains sat in a refrigerator while lawyers argued. By the time the dust settled, the moment to say goodbye had already passed. That's why Marla Gibbs didn't attend his funeral. It wasn't about bitterness. It wasn't about bad blood. She loved Sherman, but the drawn-out legal mess, the delays, the heartbreak, it robbed everyone of closure. She later said she respected his wishes and remembered him privately, away from the circus his passing had turned into. And maybe that's the part we should remember most. Sherman Hemsley wasn't just George Jefferson. He was a trailblazer, a fighter for dignity and comedy, and a man who, despite fame, kept his private life exactly that, private. Marla Gibbs still honors him as a friend and a legend. And George Jefferson? Well, he'll always be one of TV's most unforgettable characters. So now you know the real story. No secret feud, no scandal, just a complicated ending to a life that gave us so much joy. If you grew up watching George and Florence go head to head, drop your favorite comeback in the comments. And hey, if you love uncovering the stories behind TV's biggest legends, stick around. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep moving on up together.